like some more easier questions because a lot of people weren't fans of that midterm, even though that midterm was actually on the low end of difficulty. So anything to give you guys a bit more free points would be probably well appreciated. Anyways, 8:30, time's up for waiting. It is time to get coding. So, 2 parts to this tutorial this day. We have a question taken directly from last semester's final exam. And then we're going to be talking about how to write some SQL queries. It's going to be a nice, very quick, very simple tutorial today. Tomorrow's tutorial, there's no mercy in tomorrow's tutorial. We're going to be covering what is widely considered the hardest question to appear on a 1MD3 exam in all of 2020-2021. We're going to be covering the question simply labeled Go. You will see it tomorrow. And we're going to spend probably the full hour just coding up as much of the solution as possible. And it will be a horrible time. I will probably make a lot of mistakes, and hopefully it'll be fun. Anyways, let's get today first, because today is actually your last official tutorial. Tomorrow is an optional tutorial, which is why we're going to be covering such a hard question. Anyways, so the tower defense database. This was a question that I had created because I have a lot of Balloons Tower Defense stuff. I made a bot for Balloons Tower Defense posted to GitHub under my organization. And all it does is it will automatically play Balloons Tower Defense. Blah, blah, blah. It's not that interesting, but it does involve a lot of these towers. So I thought, why not make a tower database in which is accurate to the game information, and then have people write conversion functions between SQL and JSON, and then have people query that database. And it was actually kind of fun. So I'm going to be showing you guys the SQL to JSON part of this question, and then it will be optional for you guys to write SQL queries for that database to get a feel of how to work with select all from table, blah, 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 where this, divide XP by 4, etc., etc. So in this question, we're going to write a function, SQL to JSON, which takes in a database file name, a table name, and optionally a JSON file name. I've already filled in the parameters. When students were given this question, they were just given absolutely nothing. So oh my. lol, I just deleted that, didn't I? Without copy and pasting. Don't worry, I have everything backed up to another file just in case I screwed up like that. So I gave a general overview of what the table looks like. It's a bit easier to read like this, but you have a field name. These are what the database refers to everything. So ID, name, description, hotkey, XP, base cost, category. You have the type of what it should be represented in a JSON file, integers and strings. You have how the SQL is currently typing it, of integer and text. And we have some description so you get a better understanding of what they all do. Apologies, I had to sneeze. Anyways, so field description, they're just general explanations of what the ID is. It's a unique ID number, the name of the tower, description of what a tower can do, etc., etc. And the whole point is we're going to open the database and we're going to make the JSON, in which is in the format of a dictionary of dictionaries, a 2D dictionary. You guys have seen 2D dictionaries before in assignment 4 or 5. It's the transliterator question. Basically, you were given a bunch of English words, you were given a bunch of different languages, and you returned specific translations. It's very much in the same structure as that. And there's a couple key rules we gave. The keys of the top level dictionary will be the ID numbers of each entry. So basically, you're going to have ID number 1, and that might be bound to tower dart monkey. That's one of the towers in the game. So if I would have a dictionary like so, it would be a dictionary and then the ID number 1 and then information about the tower. So like name, dart, description, etc., etc. Like it would be a series of ID number, tower information, ID number, tower information, ID number, tower information, stuff like that. The second rule, the values of the top level dictionary will be dictionaries containing the rest of the values except the ID number. So if the ID number explains 1 is a tower, the tower contains all of this. So 1 points to name, description, hotkey, XP, base, cost, and category. It's a bit hard to understand from this. We gave examples. I didn't copy them over, however. This was just a quick, I typed up because I had no time. It's easier just to get into this question than it is to read all of the gobbledygook. So I'm going to just get into the question. And the first thing we have to do is choose what libraries we need. And of course, because we're going to be working with a JSON file, that's our ultimate output, we're going to import JSON. Because I'm working with a database as our input, I need SQLite 3. And you guys probably saw from context lib import closing and are wondering, what the absolute hell is closing? Closing is a database function which will automatically close our database for us. I use it. It's my style of coding. You guys do not need to know how to use it. So if you guys aren't comfortable using closing the way I'm going to show, you have been taught in class how to close a database connection, and you can do it that way. It's just the way I am comfortable doing it. One of the big things we teach in this course is code in your style. And my style just happens to be try to automate as many things as possible. So this question is going to be broken into 3 parts. 1, open the database. There are quite a few things that will occur in this part because this line, if opening the database file fails for any reason, try to open it again, but append .db to the file name. We assume that the user forgot to type .db. So that's one of the rules that we're going to have to work with. Then we're going to parse the data from the SQL. We're going to open the database, then we're going to basically read what's inside the database, and then we're going to dump the data into JSON. Those are the 3 steps of this entire question. So, step 1, open the database. So, one thing we have to do is we have to attempt to open the database. If that fails, we attempt to open the database again with .db, and if that fails, raise an exception. Because I'm using the sentence, if that fails, I'm immediately thinking, try and accept, try and accept, try and accept. Try to open the database. Accept is assume they forgot the .db. So I will try again to open the database. Accept, and then what I'm going to do is if that fails, I'm going to raise my database error. And I'm going to specify accept exception. I know I'm not working with any loops, but this is technically more valid. So I have this structure. I just need to open the database file. And we're going to do that the following. This is my way of doing it. Opening a database is broken into 2 steps. Open a live connection to the database, and then start a cursor inside the database. A cursor is a kind of like a librarian if it were a library. The cursor acts as a source of information between you and the library. Imagine right now in a COVID, you could not legally enter a library. So instead, you had to go up to the librarian and ask the librarian for information. That's what your cursor is. It's the middleman. You will ask the cursor to get you stuff, and the cursor will go get it for you. So let's open the live connection first. And in order to open a live connection, I'm going to use my with command. So with, I'm going to call closing, so Python knows to automatically close when this is done. So with closing, SQLite 3, I'm going to ask the library to start a connection between my database file, this input, and I'm going to open that as my variable con. This is a standard naming convention in Python, so I want to just use it. So I'm going to say open the connection as a database, save it to the variable con, and automatically close it when the question is done. Then inside this statement, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Open a cursor to the database now, so I'm going to call SQLite 3. Oh, no, I don't need SQLite 3 because the connection actually stores where cursors go. I'm going to ask the connection to start a cursor, and I'm going to open that as CUR, short for cursor. So now I've opened the database. I've created a cursor inside the database. Now I can get the data. So I'm going to say data equals my cursor, and I'm going to execute the following statement. Select all, star is short for all, from, and I want whatever my table name is. Remember, that's also a variable we've passed in. So I've used a format string specifically so that way I can have table be optional like that. Remember, if you guys aren't comfortable with that, you can do string.format. That's equally as valid. You just use whatever you guys are comfortable with. I find format strings a lot sexier, so I'm going to do that. So this is step one. What do I put here? Because it's the exact same thing. We're going to attempt to open another database. However, try opening it again, but with .db appended to the file name. We're assuming the user forgot to put .db. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put .db here and rerun the code. Does everyone follow what I've done so far? This is a bit complex, but it should be pretty obvious.
So I'm just confused as to what closing does and what connection does.
Yeah, that's fine. So remember how in files you have file handler equals open, let's say file, and then how you do fh.close?
Yeah.
So closing is the, if this were open database or something like that, this closing library automatically calls the .close function for me in a way that Python can automate it. So like I said, I'm comfortable using the with notation because it's just my style. If you do it the way Nick taught you in class, you would just do, I'm just going to go down a bit so that way I have some space to work with. You would do con equals SQLite 3 dot connection. We're going to open a connection between me and the file. And then what I would do is I would code whatever I needed, and I would do con.close. Python doesn't automatically know that the connect function has a close method, which is why I've imported a library that specifically finds those automatic close methods. Does that kind of make sense?
So what does the connect do?
So connect opens a so it's a live link between Python and the database file. Going back to that library example, the library exists in my hometown, but I can't ask the librarian for any information if I don't go to the library.
Right.
The connect is the exact same as going to the library. You're asking Python to go out, find that database file, and begin a conversation with it.
And the cursors to take information from like the database, right?
Exactly. It's a middleman between you and the database. So Python asks the cursor to go get information. Cursor goes to get information, and then cursor comes back with information.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you.
All right, so we've opened the database. We have our data. If I were to print data, just so we can see what is happening, and then I need a test case. So let's do this test case. So towers1db, that's one of the files I gave you guys, or sorry, towers.db, not towers1. And I'm going to open it as towers student JSON. SQL has no connect. Lol, I misspelled connect. Towers not defined, towers not defined. Oh, it's not called tower, it's called table. That's my bad. Yeah, now it's an SQL object. I have opened some sort of conversation. The cursor found data and put it inside the data variable. I don't know what that data is because Python won't show me. But if I force Python to convert data into a tuple and rerun it, oh, you can't actually force it to do over a tuple. Oh, no, I can't, because, fun fact, the cursor hasn't returned the data yet. The cursor is still very, very sworn on protecting the data. Because the librarian wants to go back to the library example, because I'm obsessed with it. The librarian wants to make sure you actually have a membership card before giving you the data back, right? So the librarian has found your book, but you haven't asked for the book. You haven't proved that you deserve the book. So what I need to do is I need to ask the database now to give me all of the records. I need to use .fetch all in order to get that book from the librarian, so to speak. And now that I have fetched the information, I have actually requested it, I now print all of that information in the database. Because now the database has said, you know what, sure, I will give it to you. In more real world situations, which we're not going to test you on, .fetch all wouldn't always work if you didn't have the proper authorization. But that's not something we test you on ever, so you don't have to worry about it. So we've now asked the database to give us the data. We have the data, like I could get rid of .db and it still works. We have to now parse the data because this is a list of tuples. This isn't the format we want. What we want is a two-dimensional dictionary. So let's get our 2D dictionary. So our 2D dictionary is going to, of course, just be a dictionary. and we're going to go for tower in data, because all of these tuples are towers, if you think about it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do our dictionary. And remember how that format was. I need this number to be the key here. So if I had tower 0, I should have the number 0 and then another dictionary. So I'm going to say dictionary at key, and I want to get this number. Luckily, this number is the first item in our tuple. So dictionary at key 0 or tower 0. And that's equal to another dictionary filled with all of this information. The name, the description, the hotkey, the experience, the upgrades, and all of that. So then in this dictionary, I'm going to need the name, in which is tower 1. I'm going to need the description, which is tower 2. I'm going to need the hotkey is next, hotkey, which is tower 3. Then I need the XP, which is tower 4. I'm grabbing the information from that tuple and I'm saving it. That's all I'm doing. The upgrade path. Whoops. Upgrade path. Is that what it's called? It's spelled exactly like that. Oh no, the upgrade path doesn't exist. I think I'm using an old database for this question. Hold on. If I do hero, is that what the file is called? Because I did a lot of these questions, and I don't remember which databases I actually was supposed to use. I think I removed upgrade path from the question for being too complicated. Yeah, I did. I removed upgrade path from the question for being too complicated. So let's not do that. Let's use towers 2 because that's one of the ones that actually has this. You can see there's no upgrade path because it shouldn't exist. So don't use the towers database I gave you. Apparently, I screwed up on that. So it should just be base price, or sorry, base cost, which is tower 5, and then category, which is tower 6, and I know I didn't put category in quotes. So what this should do is this should take all of that existing data and make it a two-dimensional dictionary. So if I printed this, I now get what we actually expect. 0 has all of this garbage, then 1 has all of this garbage, etc., etc. So now we've parsed the data into a 2D dictionary. I should probably find the towers database, the proper one, towers 1, that doesn't make this mistake. So I'll get back to you guys after the tutorial when I find that correct database. Because I just have a whole bunch of, just so you guys have the context, I just had empty database, here's database, towers, there's towers 1, towers 2, towers 3. I have a lot of database files from this question because I didn't know which one Nick would want. Lol. So, any questions before we move on? Now that we have the two-dimensional dictionary.
It's not really a question. I'm just trying to wrap my head around. So you're looping through the data, and
yeah.
So you create a new dictionary. And you're looping through the data, and so tower at 0.
It's the ID number. So that
ID
0,
Oh, okay.
that 1, that 2, those are your ID numbers.
Right.
And then all of the other item, like Tower 1, Tower 2, Tower 3, Tower 4, Tower 5, and Tower 6, those are just data that we're saving to these names.
Okay. So the key is the ID number, and the data is just a dictionary like the value of like the ID number, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then finally, the easiest part is to dump the data. So what we're going to do, again, I like my open notation. You guys don't have to do this. We're going to open the JSON file. We're going to open it with write permissions, and I'm going to save it to the variable file handler. The reason I use with is because with automatically closes variables when you're done. I like that. I like Python doing everything for me because I'm lazy. And then I'm going to do, JSON.dump, and I'm going to dump my dictionary, into my file. Nice and simple. So if I were to run this now, I should see a JSON file. It's not very pretty. There is something I can do to make it prettier, and then equals 4. What this will do is it will tell JSON to make it a bit more human readable. There we go. So we have 0, and then all of this, 1, then all of this, 2, then all of this, 3, then all of this. If you guys are wondering why 3 was turned into a string, even though it was an integer, JSON doesn't allow numerical keys like this. This is invalid. It's not proper, so JSON automatically wrapped quotes around it. But yeah, that's all this question was. This is by far the hardest part. But yeah. All right. So you guys can run it on the other towers to see what happens. I do have to move on to show you guys some of the SQL queries. So I'm going to move on. And remember, this is being recorded, so if you have to go back and rewatch, you always can. Alrighty, select statements. This website, SQL Zoo, I have it linked. We're going to cover a couple of the questions. We're basically just going to go until I run out of time. So we have 20 minutes. I keep getting emails. My phone is blowing up. All right, so this is our database table. Oh, shoot.
Can I ask a quick question about like the previous thing on your like?
Yeah, what's up?
So I just wanted the difference between dump and dumps. So
dump is already formatted data. Dump S is dump string. It's the same with load and load S. If what you have is a string, it will turn that string into a JSON dictionary and then write to the file. If what you have is a dictionary already, then you don't want to do dump S because it's not a string.
Oh, I see.
The S just means that what you're doing was in the format of a string, not in the format of proper data.
And does dump automatically turn the key values into a string for like the JSON? Okay.
Dump does all of the hard work for you.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah. And the same with load. If you're loading from a JSON file, then you would use load. If you're loading from a string, and that string is JSON information, you use load S.
Okay, makes sense.
So this is the table they've given us. They've given us a couple sample data, and the name of every column. So name, continent, area, population, GPD. And what we're going to do is we're just going to write some of the SQL queries. They gave us an example one purely so we can see how select works. So select is broken into a couple parts. You have the select keyword, the name of the columns you want to select from the database, from, which is another keyword, and then the name of the database. So the name of our database is world, and he only wanted name, continent, and population. So he only put name, continent, and population. If he wanted all information, he would do select star, and it gives every single column. This is an example of how filtering works. It uses the where keyword and puts a restriction on population being greater than whatever this number is. I don't know if that's 100 million or that's 1 billion. Anyways, also, I just noticed the data here is mismatching. So it says 200 million. Meanwhile, this is 100% not 200 million. This is the first time that we're actually given a question ourselves. Give the name and the per capita GDP for those countries with a population of at minimum 200 million. So what I need to do is I need my pieces. And I have to sneeze again. Apologies. So select, from, and where are almost in, they're in pretty much every single piece of data you could imagine. Now reminding ourselves, GDP and name are the name of the two columns we want. So if I have name GDP from world, let's remove the where clause and just see what is returned. That's a lot, but it's not what we want. Because first, we have to specify that the population, where population is at minimum or at least 200 million, which means that 200 million is, that. So that's better, but notice these numbers are really big. If we look at what the answer should be, there is some sort of calculation going on here. And that's what the per capita GDP is. Per capita GDP is the GDP divided by the population. So what he wants us to do is, in our select statement, we're selecting GDP and dividing it by population. If we submit this query, we now have the correct information because we've taken GDP and divided it from divided by population. Notice how this table doesn't have a column name anymore. That's because GDP/population isn't a column inside the database. This is now a custom column. It's custom information pulled from our database. If I were to add GDP afterwards like this, GDP has a name because it's a column directly from the database. Name has a name because it's directly from the database. But this isn't. This is custom calculated. Any questions before I move on?
So from select, you selected name and GDP. GDP, couldn't you like select name, GDP, and comma population, like all three of them?
I could, but it wants us to select the GDP per capita. So it wants us to select the GDP divided by the population. It doesn't want the population. The population isn't relevant to this question, but I could say GDP comma population, and it would give me a population column, but that's not what the question's asked for. The question is specifically asked for give only the name and the per capita GDP.
Okay.
So although you are technically correct, I could do that. It's not the correct answer, and therefore it's not relevant to the question. All right. The next SQL query. Ooh, I have 2 emails to read when I am done this tutorial. Ooh. South America in millions. Show the name and population in millions for the countries of the continent South America. Divide the population by 1 million to get in millions, of course. So let's make our pieces. Select from where? Select, what are we selecting? We're getting the name and we're getting the population, but we're getting the population in millions, meaning that we should divide by 1 million in order to get the population in millions. From, of course, our table is never changing. It's always from world. Where continent equals South America. So if I take continent equals, notice how it's not 2 equal signs. We can't assign anything in SQL. So there's no point in doing 2 equal signs because it's an extra character you shouldn't have to type. So that's why it's 1 equal sign. SQL has no concept of equal because it has no concept of colon equal. In Python and most other programming languages, the reason we use equals is because our equal sign is acting as the colon equals mathematical operator. This was taught in the first or second week. I can't remember which. But in SQL, there's no concept of a colon equal operator, which means you don't need an equal operator. You just need a single one. I know it's a bit convoluted, stupidly complex, but hey. Any questions before I move on? All right, moving on. Show the name population for France, Germany, and Italy. Cool, now we have a bit more clauses. Select name population from world where. Now we have several different situations. 1, country equals France. 2, I can't type. Country equals Germany. 3, country equals Italy. If we want France or Germany or Italy, what word should we have here? What is the Boolean condition that we need? Well, it's or. We want the country to equal France or to equal Germany or to equal Italy. There is no country. Shouldn't be continent. Hold on, I'm gonna select star again. I want to see all of the names. Is it capital? Is capital what it wants? It shouldn't be continent. Name France. Oh, where is it? Where name equals? It is. Okay, so I guess name is the name of each of the actual countries within. This is a bit horribly worded. I would have called this country, continent, area, population, etc., not name. But oh well. The question should have made clear that name was what you were looking for in this, because I thought country would have been a column name. But oh well. So yeah, it is or though. Name equals France, or name equals Germany, or name equals Italy. United. Show the countries which have a name that includes the word united. Ooh, this is a bit more complex, because now we need MySQL. We need MySQL functions from world where. So now we need a way of doing name includes the word united. And the way to use that is actually using something called like. So name like, and then we give it a string in which contains a pattern. Now the pattern we're looking for, and you will have to Google this. You would not be expected to know this off the top of your head. In a test, we would say, go to Google, SQL like query. You would go SQL like operator, W3 schools, %sign represents 0, 1, or multiple characters, underscore is one singular character. So if you had where customer name like a %, any word that starts with A and has any number of characters after it, this is any number of characters but ends with A, any number of characters or any number of characters, etc., etc. So what I want is any quantity of characters, the word united, any quantity of characters, because the word just has to be included. Yeah! United Kingdom, States, and Arab Emirates. Any questions about good old like?
Can you explain that again with the %?
So percent means 0, 1, or infinite characters before or after. So if I say %A, then of course A should still match, right? Because that's 0 characters. Or I could have BA. That is exactly 1 character before the letter A. Of course, BBA should also match. And BBBA should also match. It is 0 or more characters before the A. However, BAB doesn't match. It wouldn't match because there's a B after the A. So it doesn't match the statement anymore.
Oh, okay.
Underscore A is 1 and exactly 1, meaning that A should not match. BBA should not match, but BA should match.
I also have another question. It's not related to this question, but it's related to like SQLite.
Okay.
So Professor Moore uses like if the thing is a string, like you type text. If the thing is a int, you type like I forgot what it was, like number.
Integer.
Integer, yeah. Well, like, what is that used for? Is that for select or just for creating a table?
Just creating a table.
Okay.
Once you create a table, the types are remembered.
Okay.
So in the table example they gave up here, I'm assuming it's text, text, integer, 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 because name should always be a string. Continent should always be a string. Area should always be some sort of number. I don't know if there are decimals. It doesn't look like it, though. So that only matters, though, for creating a table. Okay, so let's do, we could probably finish all of them if we're fast. 2 ways to be big. A country is big if it has an area more than 3 million square meters or has a population of more than 250 million. Show the countries that are big. Select. It wants name, population, area. Of course, from world, you guys already know it by now. Our where is the big part, because now we have 2 cases in which could be or. A country is big if the area is strictly greater than 3 million, or the population is strictly more than 250 million. Submit the query. Bada bing, bada boom, ba. So yeah, brackets work exactly as expected. You don't need brackets, though. This statement without the brackets will still work, but you could do bracket and another condition, and then this or this. We should see and somewhere in here. But first, we have to get through question 8. So, one or the other, but not both. XOR is a operator in which means exactly that. One or the other, but not both. Show the countries that are big by area or by population, but never both. Python has an XOR operator, but it's not the way you think. The worst part is XOR as a concept doesn't always exist in most languages. Now, I don't know if, so I'm just going to quickly do the setup. I don't know if SQL has an XOR operator, so let's check that first. But I'm going to show you guys how to code XOR. XOR population SQL. Yeah. So there is no XOR. This is a really big thing. There is no XOR even in MySQL. We have to code the logic. So we need to break the problem down into its pieces. First, for XOR to even be true, this has to be true or this has to be true. That's step 1. So we could wrap this in brackets because this statement needs to be true. However, there's more clauses. However, you cannot have both. So if you think about it, you need area to be greater than 3 million or population to be greater than 250 million and not area greater than 3 million and population greater than 250 million. So what we've done here is we've stated it's one or the other, and it is not both. That is what the logic of XOR truly means. Any questions before I move on?
Shouldn't like the shift 6, like the caret thingy, like work for XOR? Or
So that's in a language like Python. But
sorry,
that
yeah, I
that
forgot
doesn't
we were in
exist in SQL.
Yeah.
Remember, we are no longer in Python anymore. We are not learning Python anymore. This is not Python. This is its own completely unique language.
So the syntax here is not like is not like a
It's
copy
completely
of the
different.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look at rounding. And then I'll probably, actually, you know what? I'm out of time. So I will leave 13, 12, 11, 10, and 9 to you guys as an exercise. I will end the recording here, and I will stay on for a couple minutes for you guys to ask questions.